them to escape, Lord Aragast?
Because it serves me, Eliphas.
We aren't getting another good video game for a very long time.
Your vengeance can wait.
Of course, my lord. Of course.
Now, prepare for the next battle!
Warhammer 40,000 is a goldmine of fiction begging to be reinterpreted as a hyper-violent video game. The sheer breadth and nihilistic carnage of this notoriously grimdark setting is perfectly suited to the medium. But as you may know if you're a fan, attempts have been of varying quality. Granted, games like Dawn of War 2, and Mechanicus stand today as amazing games all on their own, not just as tie-ins to the tabletop game, but there is a deluge of comparatively mediocre content right alongside those games. But for Warhammer Fantasy, 40K's sister game with all its swords and sorcery sensibilities, the story has been different, especially recently. Vermintide and Total War Warhammer have been some of the best games of the 2010s in general. So when it was announced that the Vermintide devs had set their sights on a 40K game in the same style, I was cautiously optimistic. I've loved 40K ever since I was a kid, which is probably why I both broke and mentally ill, so I was excited that the world of plastic crack would be coming to a gameplay formula I love in equal measure, that of Left 4 Dead, Vermintide, Deep Rock Galactic, Killing Floor, and it's a lot of good games. But I did have some reservations. Gunplay of this caliber was new ground for Fat Shark. They're renowned at this point for having amazing first-person melee combat, but gunplay is a whole other ballgame. Would it de-incentivize the game's melee combat to have guns as an option? Would the guns even feel right in accordance with 40K's highly prescriptive and detailed fictional armory? Furthermore, would the game even be good? Sometimes it feels like 40K games are cursed to just not feel great. I mean, there's so much that's easy to get wrong about this setting, and it's been a while since we've gotten a game with as much veneration for this world as something like Winter Assault. Well, this is just my first impression, based on a fleeting couple of playthroughs through a beta test. But I think the curse is broken. Darktide, about a month out from release, feels great. This is not just Vermintide with 40k characters. In fact, there's actually a really detailed character creator where you can craft your own backstory and select a voice from a few different actors. And that's bold because the best 40k games have legendary voice casts, almost inseparable from their legacies as games.
Regardless of what Chaos seeks here, the altar requires a sacrifice of blood, or more likely, a life.
When I uncovered the truth, I too shuddered and paled with fear.
Look, rhinos! Rhino!
Oh, I love them so much. But from what I've heard so far, this game is actually up to snuff in that regard. The voice work is colorful, dramatic, and just as over the top as you'd hope.
I should have known the enforcers would not tolerate me forever.
My skills, they valued, but my nature, that they despised.
Strange life. Not part of the Astra military. Not part of the Imperial Guard no more.
Vermintide fans might be worried about how that would cut down on interactions between characters, since Vermintide's Left 4 Dead style 4-player lineup remains iconic, but a lot of the flavor remains intact too. Different voices have different personality profiles, which interact with your party members in different ways. So even if you have two priests, for instance, they'll be able to establish a rapport where they both have distinct presences in the dialogue.
The heretics are to free!
It's an exceptional way to allow for duplicate characters without losing that sense of individual expression. And that's another point that has me tremendously excited about this game. This game has some remarkable diversity in a universe where most named characters look like a baseball player from the 30s. You can select your race, body type, and really dig into the nitty-gritty of your character's life, almost like an RPG. The premise here is that you're a convict sentenced to eventual death by carrying out suicide missions, clearing out heretics and chaos mutants. But how you ended up there and your character's individual reaction to that information is up to you. It demonstrates so much love for this setting on the part of the developers, and it's deeply vindicating as someone who grew up with this stuff. And that oozes from this game's every pore. I promise I'll get to gameplay soon, but I really want to discuss presentation. In my opinion, something even the greatest 40k games occasionally struggle with is getting across the setting's central sense of tragedy and hopelessness. Most 40k games are content to focus on the macho, action-heavy tales of the Emperor's Space Marines, and that's fine, it makes sense, but Darktide really hones in on the bleak and the despondent. This game sells what Warhammer does better than anyone: heavy metal spacefaring horror. Massive spires of industrial development collide grotesquely with Catholic architecture, and the harsh sounds of violence and endless labor are only broken up by ruthless soldiers barking orders at one another and the howling of people who have lost their minds. You don't get loading screen tips in this game, you get propaganda. You don't just shoot bad guys, you tear them to pieces and blow them apart. You're a bad guy, everyone's a bad guy. It's like Mario Party, but everything's it's pretty fucked up, and it's a freaking good time the second you dig into it. So without further ado, let's talk gameplay. There are 4 character classes in Darktide: the Sharpshooter, a sort of classic take on the foot-slogging Imperial Guardsman; the Priest, who is not a healer but instead a chainsaw-wielding, psalm-reciting maniac; the Psyker, a sort of space wizard who installs malware on their own brain in exchange for force lightning; and the Ogryn, who is very big. The time I've spent so far has been on the Priest, and it is a damn good time charging in recklessly, shrieking and raising a combat axe. I suspect that if you really like Vermintide for its melee, this is the class for you, since they waste no time getting in the thick of it and hacking people to chunks. But no matter who you play, it does seem like melee and ranged combat support each other quite well in this game. Just like in the tabletop, enemies must engage you in melee range if you enter close quarters. Melee is quick, effective, and satisfying as all get out. However, some enemies are going to make it difficult for you. Enemy suppressing fire demands cover be taken, and large hordes are best buttered up with a grenade or taken out with gunfire of your own. The gunplay feels pretty damn nice too. Even my Priest's wimpy machine pistol was shredding heretics into fresh mozzarella in no time. What this means is that it feels right to swap between melee and ranged fluidly, and doesn't feel like you have to prioritize one over the other, which feels great. A lot of shooters treat melee like a last resort, which would just be tragic in a game like this. Ooh, that's good stuff. Beyond that, you have a lot of good shooter's standards like explosive barrels and pretty healthy enemy variety. They remain inspired by Left 4 Dead's special Infected, usually disabling a player in a way that demands cooperation. It works well, as it does in the Vermintide games, and requires that you and your party stick together when carrying out the game's linear objectives. The grey health systems from Left 4 Dead and Vermintide have been replaced by Toughness, a replenishing separate resource. You can restore yourself by taking cover and staying near your team, and you get a more permanent boost at limited health stations. It's a good way of preserving health as a resource to manage while also giving the game a bit more arcadey immediacy in a way that encourages players to stick together. Overall, I found the gameplay immediately exhilarating. Inhabiting a fully realized 40k character I got to make in a video game is a new experience, and it is intoxicating. Speaking of which, let's talk music, because it rules. Again, just listen to this stuff.
With this grenade, I purge thee! What hath become of my companions?
Try not to make a much of this task, varlets.
Walls of ambience give way to galvanic spikes of electronica, synthesizers and hard-hitting drums cutting through the sounds of combat. It's not the orchestral sweeping stuff we're used to with these games, but it is a welcome change, especially because it sounds so cool. I'm so excited to hear this game's full soundtrack, because what we have so far is just great. And that's what I've got to say about Darktide's beta so far, man. It is adrenalizing, to say the least, and in a matter of hours, I went from cautiously excited to hyped beyond measure. If first impressions are honest here, this game is going to be a big win for Fat Shark, and I cannot wait to play the full release. I'm gonna go help myself to just a bit more purging. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope your day is lovelier than lovely.